March Madness is over. B-ball is done. And yet we can't escape the damn courts.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I am Kenton Gibbs here with Grayson Boone, who is filling in with Dono. He's doing a little bit of traveling and whatnot. But folks, before we get into today's show, I've got to tell you all about Monopoly Go. This thing is something that is amazing. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends in tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and a ton more. Go get the Monopoly Go app on. It's free in both Google Play and the App Store today. Game on. Now, Grace, I'm tired of talking about this. I'm tired. Lord, play Labyrinth. Hey, Lord, I'm tired. But we got some massive lawsuits. We got the NCAA being sued and what that means for players and teams. We got Clemson. Let me tell you something. They said, Florida State, y'all don't know which way to go. I'll make it easy. Follow me. Y'all came out. If you ever seen Harlem Nights, when what's that man's name? Arsenio Hall was shooting the Tommy gun and the other guy was shooting the little 22 and he said, stop shooting that little stuff. That's what Clemson just said to FSU. And we got to get your two early predictions for the ACC. You ready to get into it, Grayson? Let's
do it, man.
All right. Well, let's start here. Because of the latest antitrust whooping, I'll tell you what. All of the teams and the people filing lawsuits against the NCAA, they like Kendrick Lamar. They whooping feet right now because this is terrible. The NCAA got to protect themselves at all costs. But anywho, because of the newest antitrust ruling, $3.7 billion, or I believe 3.17 to 3.7, not sure on that exact number. I'll get back to you in just a moment, is ordered to be paid out to players over the next 10 years, with all Power 4 teams having the option to pay their players or to pay their athletes between 17 and 22 million. It is not mandatory. It is optional. You can pay as much as you want or as little as you want direct from the school. Grayson, what are your thoughts on this as far as how it affects the ACC so far?
It's wild times. If you put your ear to the ground, you can really closely hear the NCAA losing their grip on everything they've had control over for decades now. And all of this new information about the antitrust lawsuit is fascinating to sort of dive into. Now, truth be told, I typically stray away from all of the court kind of stuff because it bores me. However,
it's 2.7 billion, by the way. That's the exact number, 2.7 billion.
However, the implications coming down the road, you simply cannot ignore. And so the potential for back pay for hundreds of athletes for plenty of schools, and then plus each school getting an allotment around of $20 million a year. You talk about looking at leveling the playing field, which I've seen is thrown around a lot in discussions like these ones. It's a really big deal. And, when you look further down the road about what may or may not happen with college football, potentially branching off to become essentially its own entity, these types of lawsuits just inch a little bit closer to the end of the NCAA, essentially. And it's so crazy to think about the potential of something like that happening, because it's like, what happened to this level of athletics that I love? What is going on in these schools wanting out and the TV viewership and this, that, and the other? It's so much to try and keep track of. But the SparkNotes version of it is things are not going well for the NCAA. And each article gets released, you get a little bit closer. You peer a little bit more behind that curtain to see an office starting to go up in flames here.
Absolutely. And what do you think about the angle that many people are producing with this latest information coming out that it's not mandatory, but it's optional based on what the schools and the NCAA's funding can do together, in terms of this may not be a leveling of the playing field between the haves and the have-nots in the Power 4. This may just be the rich getting richer, as certain teams may not even be able to hit the 17 to 22 million. Which one do you see it as, or do you see it as a mix of both? Or are you waiting on the results?
I think it could be a mix of both. You could certainly see the rich getting richer. I think that's a very real scenario. But, looking at, us two being Wolfpack guys in particular, I see this could really benefit a school like NC State, because it could help them, spread around anything they need in facilities or keeping players paid or anything else to to keep, starting to raise the floor of that program. And I mean, the same is true for many schools in the ACC in particular. But, you look at schools like a Florida State or a Clemson, however much longer they're still around in the ACC, them getting an extra $20 million to throw on top of everything else they already got going on, it could certainly help them keep a leg up on the rest of the competition. So perhaps it's a little bit early to tell exactly how it will play out, but I do think overall there is more benefit than non-benefit.
Yeah, I think there is more benefit. And I think that a lot of people, I don't think that there will be a leveling of the playing field. I think there will be a bigger gap. I think that the rich will get richer, but for everybody, right? Like the bottom of the Power Four will gain another leg on the teams in the Group of Five and all that, and the richest of the Power Five or Power Four will gain another leg on the poorest of the Power Four. Because the way that this looks and the way that this sounds, even if the universities don't have a penny to their name, nor a pot to piss in, nor window to throw it out of, as my people would say, you're looking at a situation where the NCAA is still going to inject you with a certain amount of money that gets you close enough to where you can pay players something. But one thing that you and I talked about a lot is the idea of having scholarship changes to different sports, which is also a new part of these new rules that the NCAA is coming up with to counteract or stay in front of this antitrust law thing. And now it's like there's the potential of having 31 baseball scholarships if your school can afford that, which I think is big time, man. I think that's massive because to me, yes, your sport is very different from football. Yes, every baseball player, you're a baseball guy, so you know the sport much more than me. I personally believe that it's much less violent, much less taxing on the body than a football, but that still doesn't – in basketball, almost everybody has a scholarship. The vast majority of the roster has scholarships. In baseball, when I found out that 31 guys were splitting like 15, when I tell you my jaw was like on the ground, I'm like, what? And so something like that I think is big time, regardless of what happens with the haves and have-nots. I think that alone is amazing in that more players will have their scholarships or have their education fully funded.
11.7 is the number in baseball. That's a real number. They're splitting 11.7 scholarships. And so, when you're looking at schools getting these gigantic allotments, you think about the potential. I mean, me in particular, because I'm a college baseball guy, you could see college baseball's landscape change entirely. And everyone's just going to focus on football and basketball. I get that. But all the other sports that, that could really see a drastic change to their landscapes is a very real situation. And a baseball team getting a full allotment of scholarships, I can only imagine how that will change for various schools across the country. Because, I mean, the SEC and the ACC have dominated college baseball this year. And so you're looking at, the rich getting richer in that scenario. I mean, you could flip the entire league on its head per se. So it's very interesting to see where this all is headed. Again, me personally, I try and stay out of the weeds on this type of stuff. I'd much rather just talk about the X's and O's and scoreboard, but it's reaching the point where you simply can't ignore it. It's going to be in your face. It's going to be in our faces all throughout the summer with nothing going on here, the school year coming to a close. So, I mean, changes are coming to the landscape of college sports, whether you like it or not.
Changes are coming to the landscape of college sports, and another place where changes are coming potentially is conference realignment. That's still apparently happening. I know you said you don't like the courts, Grayson, and so I'm going to be a generous co-host to you today, and I'm going to give you more court stuff. Stick around because we're about to talk at Clemson and what they're doing in South Carolina that's got some folks all up in the tizzy right after this break, folks. Now, there's one thing that I want to make clear to everybody today, and that thing is that LinkedIn Jobs is the place to be whenever you're talking about doing your hiring for your small business. The facts are the facts are the facts. Grayson said he's a scoreboard guy. Well, let's talk the scoreboard in terms of LinkedIn, shall we? It's not just a job board, but it's a place where you can hire professionals where over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other job lead sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. I am a technical recruiter, folks. I am telling you firsthand. I have used LinkedIn. This is not something that they're forcing me to read that I'm like, oh, I've never used this product. LinkedIn Jobs is where you need to be. It'll help you with your small business hiring in no time. And I'm telling you, if you just go post your job, you can post it for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions definitely apply. So Grayson, we're now going to have to talk more court stuff. And I know we want to talk about fun stuff. Y'all don't want to hear us say courts no more. I get it. But here we are talking about it regardless. Clemson's coming out firing, and I'm going to read this excerpt because there's a lot in their argument, but I believe that this is the most cogent and important part of it. Clemson took the disagreement to another level when they said that the malintent was to harm Clemson and deter its exit from the conference by, among other means, seeking to diminish the value of Clemson's intangible property. And this last part is the part where they added a little Tapatio. They added a little Texas Pete. They added a little Frank's Red Hot, if you will, here. We're looking at Clemson saying, and I quote, this is directly from their argument here, as a result of the ACC's misstatements, the value of Clemson's media rights has diminished in the eyes of these and other third parties. This diminution in value, this diminution, I apologize, these words are beating me up today. This diminution in value injures Clemson, impedes its ability to negotiate future media rights agreements, and worsens its negotiating position with potential future collaborators. Grayson, I'm not a lawyer. As y'all see, I'm not a professional speed reader either, but this seems very intense and very pointed from Clemson to the ACC, basically saying, you're holding me back. Let me go be free. What do you make of all this?
It's wild because, for a lot of the way all of this has played out, as an NC State fan, we're kind of just sitting back and watching Clemson and Florida State, light their torches and have at it here. And, the latest in this specific article basically states that the ACC is like, all right, well, if y'all want to get out of this conference, whether you like it or not, we have your TV rights until 2036 because that's the grant of rights. That is the deal. And Clemson's like, wait a minute, we have receipts. So we're gonna provide those receipts now because y'all are looking funny in the light. The ACC is providing their receipts. It's just a whole back and forth. On this front in particular, I think Clemson has some they got some momentum behind them. I think they're probably in the right on this instance in particular. Where this is headed, I think we all probably know. I think Clemson and Florida State are eventually going to break free of these ACC chains here. How long that will continue to take, that remains to be seen. But I think Clemson have some legitimate beef. I think the changing of what's going on behind the curtain is a very real thing with the ACC. I think they're just struggling and backpedaling at this point. So I don't know. I think Clemson turning up the heat, trying to step into their shoes, I think they're doing the right thing here.
I absolutely understand the idea of taking this aggressive approach in terms of what you want and what you're trying to get out of this thing. And you don't want to have a similar situation to what Florida had in their county or in their court case in Florida, where Florida State was forced to basically go back, rewrite your argument, come to something more concise, more clear, more in plain language. But man, these are two unsalvageable marriages at this point because, everybody said, oh, the Florida State situation is unsalvageable, but maybe Clemson took the gloves off too. They said it's over. There's no more marriage. There's no reconciling. And your mom's ugly. Her cooking is gross. That's what just happened here. This thing got very intense. And so let me ask you this. There's a lot of speculation going around about when these teams leave the conference. So I'm going to ask you two questions, actually. When do you see these teams leaving the conference? if you do see these teams leaving the conference, when do you see them leaving? And actually, I'm going to throw a third part on there. What do you see happening to the ACC after these two teams leave?
Oh, man. Loaded question for a guy like me.
Very
we
loaded.
sit here in 2024. The grants go until 2036. I think you'll probably see it end somewhere in between, maybe like a 2027-ish, 720 or 2028. What happens to the rest of the conference after that? Who knows, man? I mean, you could try and pull other schools from, close by in the region to try and salvage the ACC. But I mean, there's really no disputing that Clemson and Florida State are two of the, I guess, gems, you could say, of the conference. It kind of gave me chills trying to say that out loud, but it's true. They are carrying the water for the ACC. They are bringing eyeballs and dollar valuations to the ACC. That all is very true. And so them wanting, a rightful slice of that pie, I get it. As an NC State fan, I get it. Many of us get it. And so, for them to get out, I think it is not a matter of if, it is much more of a matter of when. And I think you're looking at probably 4 or 5 years down the road. Eventually, they're gonna build up enough momentum they can pull the trigger here.
I absolutely agree that they're going to pull the trigger very shortly, and my prediction is somewhere in the 2 to 3 year range. I think this all is over and done with, because that number will be much more manageable by that time for these two teams. But I don't think either one of these teams are going to win the court case, or that the ACC is that hard up to keep their grant of rights from going to discovery, to where they just, there's nothing they want to say and nothing they want to show to the world, and they'll do anything. They'll let them out for any amount to not have to show it to the rest of the world. So let me ask you this. In terms of looking at where the conference goes after Clemson, what do you see it looking like? Do you see there being no conference? Do you see it being out of the conference will go on? It'll just look different. What does that look like to you?
I tend to think that the conference will survive in the end. I think it'll just be obviously a much lesser version of that, but it's also hard to predict, if when Florida State and Clemson do leave, who's to say that, North Carolina's not the next out of the door. And then after that, Virginia Tech, NC State, it's hard to say. And the way these schools have been voting over the last couple of years, it makes you think that there would be more to follow them out that door. And, I see a lot of speculation about potentially adding schools in the future, like a UConn or a USF. Respectfully, they just don't bring the same flavor that a Clemson or a Florida State bring. And so that would make me feel that eventually the conference will indeed fold. And then you'd have full-blown chaos on the front of conference realignment. But it's so hard to predict, I think, at this point in time. Although I do think the ACC will survive, but I don't think the most of the current schools you currently see in the ACC, I think they will end up going elsewhere.
The way I see this thing, I look at it and I say the ACC and the Big 12 aren't smart enough to say, hey, we need to get out of our own way and merge here. Again, you're not going to beat the Big 2 by quality or by the amount of eyeballs drawn. And by quality, I mean the amount of eyeballs drawn, because I'm not saying it's a lower quality of football. Hell, Clemson's won multiple national championships, more than all of the Big Ten teams combined, in terms of during their run and all that good stuff. So I'm not saying the ACC doesn't play good ball, but what I am saying is even if Florida State and Clemson were to remain, I still think a merger is one of your better options, because you're looking at a case where you cannot go one for one, blow for blow with the Big Ten or the SEC. No. You can't. You can have more of a product. You can have your product on 4 to 5 days out of the week. That's where you win. Those are the margins where I can see victory for the ACC. But again, the powers that be, well, there can only be one commissioner, or there can only be one deputy commissioner, or there can only be, and it's like, dude, here's what's going to be fun when it happens, when neither of you have a job anymore. That's going to be really fun to see, all because nobody wanted to say, let's do what's right for the conferences. But Grayson, we're finally off the court, and no, we're not talking to hardwood. We're going to get on the field. We're going to get your predictions for this upcoming season. And we'll see if you on your Playboy card and you seeing a whole lot of red, or if you're going to not be as much of a homer as some hosts on this show are in terms of who your picks are. Stay tuned, folks. Stay locked in with Locked On. And another thing you need to be locked in with is Monopoly Go. I want to make one thing very, very clear to you all. There is no better thing to do than Monopoly Go, because I know you're saying flag on the play. You've talked about Monopoly Go already today, but there's too much good stuff going on in this game for me to mention it just one time. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their building, swipe from their vaults, or make them pay a ridiculous upcharge on rent. You can do all of that and more on Monopoly Go. Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton of their unique mini games like Digging for Treasure or a Robot Pachinko game, and there's always a new timed event to help you win big, like Massive Multipliers, where you win or Rent Frenzy. So go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Folks, game on. All right, so Grayson, we're about to get out of here. But before we do, let me ask you this. What do you see in terms of the ACC championship game in 2024? Who are the two teams that are going to punch their ticket on down to Charlotte, and who you got coming out on top?
Man, predicting this in May is really something.
It's way too early for a reason. Go for it. Fire from the hip. Tell me what you got.
I will do my best to keep my red-tinted glasses off. However, I do think NC State, this is the year that at least they make it to Charlotte. They have the offense, they have the firepower, they have the schedule, which is really something that needs to be addressed, because it really does feel like the stars have aligned for the Wolfpack to finally break through and get to that ACC championship game. So I do think NC State will be one of the two teams. The other team, I think it might be Florida State. And they have some new pieces to try and, throw into the system. Mike Norvell, I really do think he's building something down there in Tallahassee for quite some time to come. Whether or not DJU will pan out at the QB position, that will remain to be seen. Me personally, I am a big skeptic of DJU. I was fairly unimpressed during his time at Clemson. His return to the ACC will be something to watch, but I think Florida State has picked up so many stellar athletes in the portal, a lot of which coming from Alabama after the mass exodus, including Nick Saban. So I think Florida State has enough. They got enough dogs in their dog pound to make it back to Charlotte, and I think it's going to be the Seminoles and the Wolfpack.
Who do you think wins it?
Oh man, there's no right answer. I'll be a homer. I'm going to pick my Wolfpack, but do I feel good about it in May? That's a whole nother story. I couldn't give you a straight answer on that one, but my answer might change a million other times before we get to August and kick this thing off. But as of now, I will buy into the hype for NC State, and I'll take the Wolfpack.
Which players are you buying into the hype for? Who's your offensive player of the year in the ACC?
It pains me to say it, but I'm interested to see what Cam Ward does at Miami. And I think Miami is more often smoke and mirrors than it is substance. I'm very skeptical of Mario Cristobal down there, but Miami, they also picked up Martinez from Oregon State at the running back position, a little bit more firepower for him on offense. Cam Ward's a dog, though. I saw weirdly a lot of him when he played with Washington State. Really, really good quarterback, really superb athlete. And so I think if you build enough around him and just let him cook, he can take you to heights that you maybe didn't expect to get to. So offensive player of the year for the ACC, I'm leaning Cam Ward. I think he can do it.
Defensive player of the year, who you got? And this is the last one, so make it your best one.
Defensive player of the year. Y'all are going to yell at me because this is another homer pick. I'm going to go Aiden White, NC State. And it was a really, really big deal for the Wolfpack to bring him back. And we thought we were losing him either to the portal or to the NFL draft. He psychs us all out. He comes back. This is a guy that has not allowed a coverage touchdown in not one, but 2 consecutive years. So he's a really big deal. I think it's virtually impossible for a corner to win this award, but that's the first name that popped my head. So I'm going Aiden White.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Grayson Boone is an unmitigated homer who can't be objective. Nah, I'm messing around. But Grayson, seriously, it's great to have you on the show. Tell the folks where they can find your work. You
can find me on Twitter at gboone_ or Locked On Wolfpack, capital L, capital O _Wolfpack. Anything NC State related you want to talk to us about, find us on there. We'll be happy to chat with you.
All righty. Thank you all so very much for coming out with us. Y'all already know what it is. Dono will be back shortly. But until then, I guess we need more riffraff like Grayson to come on and kind of say things, I guess. Keep it locked in. Exactly. Keep it locked in with Locked On. Peace and love, y'all.